We're definitely going to talk about that 2017 race because I will talk to anybody about that 2017 race. You in particular, at the beginning of the pandemic, when everything was shutting down and we had nothing to talk about on this podcast, I think we did an entire episode dedicated to the 2017 women's 1500-meter final because it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite races of all time. I think it's in a group of 4 or 5 men, women, doesn't matter. Best races. There's so much going on. You could write an entire book on the last 600. I mean, just the names that are involved, the moves. Obviously, you're a big part of that. Your last 100, like you can go frame by frame and dissect, like, how did she get through on the rail? Um, so now that you're here and I have the opportunity to ask you, what do you remember from 2017? Because that didn't get in the film because, Fenton maybe didn't think, you were going to get that medal. So he's like, let's do the film in 2017, not 2018. No, I'm just kidding. He would never.
That's funny. Well, I mean, I had just come off an Olympic medal, and so that seemed important to probably visit and document and all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
you don't know how like happy and how heartwarming it is to hear you say that that you have that much understanding and respect for how like complicated and layered and amazing that final was in 2017. I think that for within the context of just Jenny Simpson's career, I think that medal gets overlooked sometimes because I have a world championship and an Olympic medal. But 2017, that silver medal was so like against the odds and in a race where just everybody was there, which I feel like honestly is every 1500 meters in the last 8 or 9 years is like everybody is there. World record holders, current world record holders, and medalists from world championships and Olympic championships and stuff. So they're always loaded. But 2017 was really kind of in a league of its own in a lot of ways. And so to have come out triumphant from that. But when I think about it, it's funny because, and I love this because my coach Heather Burrows was on the trip with us. And there's a couple of things. First of all, Jason had been in the stadium, Mark had been in the stadium, my former coach Julie Benson had all been in the stadium when I'd medaled before. And Heather had never been in the stadium like live in person when I medaled. And that seemed like really important to me that she had that experience. So I remember going to the championships and thinking, this time she got to be on the trip. And if she's ever going to be in the stadium when I medal, this is probably our best chance. And so that was a little bit on my mind. And then also, like I said, the year had just been really hard. And I think, normally my happy look on the sunny side of things was just burdened. And I think in life, you just go through those types of cycles. And sometimes you're just totally in a groove and sometimes you're in a little bit of a funk. And I definitely had a difficult progression up to the championships that year. And so it was funny how we got on the airplane and there was something that just transformed in me that once we got on the airplane and we were headed towards London, just my whole demeanor changed. And I think it was a little bit of, I've done this so many times that I know what it's supposed to feel like landing in the place where we have either our training camp or world or Olympic championships. And I just allowed that part of myself that knows what this is supposed to feel to just kind of take over. And even Heather reflected after that week that once we got to London, I just exuded an amount of confidence that I hadn't shown in months. And I don't know exactly where that came from, but I was talking about medaling. I was talking about what I wanted to achieve each round and making it to the final. And so I think just kind of allowing that attitude to take over, even when maybe I didn't have, according to my workouts the few weeks before, maybe didn't have necessarily the evidence to prove that I deserve to feel that confident. I think that all really helps. So those are some of my big memories kind of leading into the race. But getting to the final, anyone that is a big fan of track and field understands that when you make it to the starting gun of the final, there's already this incredibly difficult journey to just get to that point. So I remember just thinking, if you have made it this far, like you're 1500 meters away from this really difficult journey, kind of finding out what happens, you get to turn the page and see what the ending is. And that just felt more hopeful to me than it felt burdened. And I think that
Mhm.
I hadn't necessarily felt that way through most of the year. So I just went into the race with the right frame of mind, even though it had been a challenging year. And then the actual race goes off, and I mean, like a lot of races, you don't remember every step of it. You kind of have these snapshots of memories of it. I think your awareness is just at such a high level, and there's only so much you can ever remember anyway.
Mhm.
But I do remember that last 100 meters, and there was such a big cluster of us, and it's such an incredible and deep pool of talent right now that so often in the 1500 meters we're strung out, and there's really single file and spread out the last
Yeah.
300 meters or so. And this was totally different. This is totally different. We were all in a group. It was all together. It was tightly packed. And I remember coming down that finish line, and it is terrible advice to ever take the inside. Like, you never, ever take the inside. And I like to tell people, it is, in all of my years of racing, it has worked for me one time. It has only worked once out of all the times I've raced. But it did come together and work that day. And I remember coming around the curve and thinking about taking it a little bit wide, but just for some reason kind of sensing, or maybe I was just that, you know, fraction of a tick of a second behind, that I was able to kind of intuitively feel and see that people were going wide. And so I stayed tight on the inside, and people moved out, and just an entire lane opened up for me to run the shortest line to the finish. And that, like I said, this is not like a clinic on racing, because this is not something you should do. You should never expect that the inside lane will open up for you. It can be a dangerous tactic, because people can feel you coming and they can close that inside lane for you. So always try to pass on the outside. But I just saw it open up, and it was just a perfect opportunity, and I slipped in there. And then the last thing I'll say about that race, as far as like my memory, is I just remember finishing, and people have asked me, because I celebrated so ridiculously. I was so excited. People have asked me if I actually thought I won, because the margin of
Yeah.
victory and margin between medals was so slim. It's crazy when you finish how like, it's like when you're racing a friend in practice, and you're doing strides or something, and you're just neck and neck. You kind of know who outleaned the other, whether you're the one in front or back. I mean, it's the same way in races. Even though it's so close, you kind of know. So I definitely knew I was second, but it just was like this, I just couldn't have imagined that it was going to end that well. Like, this
Mhm.
whole incredible journey and struggle with lots of highs along with the lows, um, and just sticking my nose in it every single time and saying, I'm just willing to see what happens if I go as hard as I can. And just
Mhm.
to think that it ended that way, that I actually pulled it off and won another medal. It just was a better ending than I had imagined I could have scripted for myself. So I'm as proud of that finish as I am any finish in my career.